all villains are easily recognizable because some have just been introduced. Every now and then we like to introduce new villains to the comics to keep our heroes on their toes and to compete with some of the older villains to see who really has earned that top spot when it comes to being the worst of the worst. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Join me today as we count down the top 10 newest Marvel comic villains and aim to keep everyone up to date on some of the newer evil folks to show up on scene. Will they last, however, or will they fade into oblivion? That is for you to decide. Let's find out just what makes these villains tick and what makes them so bad and hopefully memorable as we get counting. Number 10. Red Goblin. Red Goblin is the amalgamation of the Carnage symbiote, combined with Norman Osborn's Green Goblin. When you mix a blood-fused symbiote like Carnage together with the insane Green Goblin, you get Red Goblin, a pretty fearsome foe to be reckoned with. Spider-Man had to renounce his mantle to protect his family and fight Red Goblin as Peter Parker, and had to also call in backup to defeat this epic version of Norman Osborn introduced a few years back. This whole experience as well severely messed with Norman's mind and later resulted in him believing that he was in fact Carnage, aka Cletus Cassidy, and was not at all Norman Osborn, forgetting all about that life until another mysterious villain, Kindred, gave him back his sanity. Thanks, Kindred, that's so nice of you. Number 9. Kindred. Kindred is a Spider-Man villain who was first introduced in the 2018 series of Amazing Spider-Man in issue 1. Kindred itself is a demon from hell who used to be human and seems to have had a close relationship with Peter Parker in life. However, what we didn't know for a long time was just who Kindred's true identity was. We simply knew the villain wanted revenge on Pete and on Norman Osborn, and that they had demonic powers in addition to having 2 pet centipedes, which Kindred often uses to assist them and do their bidding. Recently, Kindred's true identity was revealed to be that of Harry Osborn, but some fans are still hesitant to take this reveal at face value, believing it could be a misdirect and that we may still not yet know Kindred's true identity. So many people have so many theories. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a reminder, if you love us like we love you, show it to us by giving this video a thumbs up, and thank you for doing so. Number 8. The Griever at the end of all things. So I always want to call this villain the Griever at the end of the universe, but that must be because I'm a huge Hitchhiker's Guide fan, and that's just bubbling back to the surface in my mind. But it's not the Griever at the end of the universe, it's the Griever at the end of all things. The Griever at the end of all things was a new villain who showed up and seemingly killed Molecule Man, proving how powerful and scary she was as early as her first appearance. I gotta say, I think her design is cool, but I'm kinda disappointed that she hasn't resurfaced in any Fantastic Four issues since her first fight with the FF team. The fight was so epic that the Fantastic Four actually had to call in a ton of backup, calling on temporary and rotating members of the team to join them, and finally revealing after the events on Battleworld and the recreation of the multiverse that they actually weren't dead as all their fellow heroes were made to believe, but were actually alive and rebuilding everything in secret. So that let that cat out of the bag. Number 7. Apocalypse's children. Slash first horsemen, I suppose. These kids are the ones who obviously inspired Apocalypse in the future when it came to naming and creating his horsemen thereafter. Their names are the same as those Apocalypse would normally take for his horsemen: war, death, famine, and pestilence. These children made their first appearance recently and then resurfaced once more extremely recently in the newest X-Men series. They hold a grudge against Apocalypse, who they believe abandoned his family. They blame him for such, and while you might think that Apocalypse is a villain, so who cares, right now he is aligned with the other mutants of Krakoa, and as such is actually considered mostly a good guy? For now anyways. He did do some shady stuff, so not so nice Apocalypse. Or however we're saying your name now, Krakoan symbols with an A in the middle, however I say that in Krakoan. Number 6. Dark Carnage. Dark Carnage is like Cletus Cassidy but dead, and brought back to life using the Grendel symbiote, and then turned into a towering skeletal monster that is hungry for your spine. Well, maybe not your spine specifically. But if you bonded with a symbiote ever, alive or dead, he's hungry for that spine. It's finger licking good. Delicious spines. Dark Carnage was sort of the final phase of Cletus Cassidy, who sought to awaken Null by gathering all the codices from within all those beings who had ever bonded with a symbiote. Doing so would awaken the Dark God, which was just the kind of chaotic party Cassidy was all about. And attempting to do this, he perished but was ultimately successful as Null is now awake and headed for Venom and Earth. Cletus may be gone as a result, but the villain has died many times and returned in many different incarnations, such as this new one, Dark Carnage. I'm excited to see if he comes back again, and when he does, just which version of Carnage we'll see next. Maybe some kind of dark, immortal Carnage. Number 5. Orchis. If you didn't already know me to be a big Marvel X-Men fan, then this list should solidify that as a thing for you. Yes, it is definitely a thing. I love the X-Men. Orchis is the new big bad for mutant kind, introduced originally in the House of X series. House of X and Powers of 10 were the series that launched into this new wonderful X-Men line with Jonathan Hickman at the head, Dawn of X. Orchis is designed to be kind of the ultimate mutant enemy. With mutants coming together and putting their differences aside, it also inspired their enemies, and even allies in some cases, to become wary of them and do pretty much the same. Orchis comprises multiple organizations, each comprising different percentages of the organization, including SHIELD, SWORD, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Hydra, AIM, Armor, and Strike. When I did that, I almost lost my ring. Oh my goodness. Orchis' goal is to monitor and prevent the potential extinction of humans on the planet, and they see mutant evolution and advancement as a threat to that goal. Number 4. Hordeculture. Hordeculture have to be some of my favorite of the newest villains and villain groups to surface. They are a group of elderly women and botanists who are focused on preserving the planet, focusing on returning it to a more pristine state. In other words, they want to make sure people stop messing everything up by taking control of everyone's food source, in essence controlling plant life and crops, in order to decide who gets to live and kinda who gets to die. As of right now, there are 4 women who are part of the group that we know of: Lily, Edith, Opal, and Augusta. They also made a brilliant and hilarious appearance in the limited Empire X-Men series, which, by the way, if you haven't read, is pretty hilarious and great, and I do recommend it. You don't really have to read Empire to enjoy it either, you just need to know the general plot of that event to enjoy the story of this 4-issue series featuring my fave new villains, Hordeculture. Number 3. White Sword. White Sword was one of the mutants who was part of the original mutant nation of Okara, which Apocalypse and his wife Genesis ruled. He was one of the leaders who was sent along with his army of 100 champions to defeat the Amenthi who attacked. He was believed to have been victorious, but was also lost to his people as a result. A healer capable of resurrection, he would revive his army daily to fight the Amenthi horde the following day. It's said that this drove the White Sword somewhat insane, and when he later ran into his own people such as Genesis, who herself had been sent out with a mutant army under her command, he saw even them as his enemy and he attacked, defeating Genesis. He will be one of the champions to fight on the side of Araco opposing Krakoa in the Ten of Swords tournament. He also happens to look similar to Apocalypse, but with different armor. Maybe you don't see that, but I definitely see that. Number 2. The Vescora. The Vescora are a mysterious alien race that made a brief appearance in Cable Volume 4 Issue 5 as part of the Ten of Swords event. We run into them on the Sword headquarters space station known as Peak 7. It seems the Vescora swiftly invaded Sword's orbital HQ, and within 10 minutes had pretty much decimated almost the entire crew. We know this from the log featured in the issue. Those few surviving crew had no other option but to completely shut down the station's power in order to prevent the Vescora from progressing any further with their invasion. To prevent anyone from potentially awakening the station or the Vescora, they didn't send out any SOS calls at the time of powering everything down, and essentially just kinda disappeared. Opal Luna Saturnine was the one who compelled Cable and his parents, Marvel Girl and Cyclops, to awaken the station once more. Though her motives remain unknown, it's speculated that she wanted to harm the family to help prevent Cable and possibly all mutants from being able to enter the Otherworld tournament, although her motives are still very foggy in my opinion. The Vescora seem obsessed with cleansing, dissecting, and learning of any alien life forms. In other words, they pretty much want to kill everyone. Number 1. Donald Blake. Thor issue number 9 of the newest run from 2020 starts off a new story arc titled Prey. At the end of the issue, we see the return of Donald Blake, a former persona of Thor's who basically became his own person but then was trapped in a hell dimension. Driven mad, Dr. Donald Blake has returned, escaped his prison, and seems to be looking for revenge on all of the gods. This is a refreshing and interesting take on an old character, bringing him back as a villain now. It's what I really find intriguing about this new run on Thor, which I thought was maybe going to be trying to take us back to ones with, the title character himself and everything else, and yet we have amazing things like this happening. Donald Blake returning to us not as the same old ally, but as a villain. Shortly after escaping, Dr. Blake is confronted by Loki, so that's the god that he deals with first. Surprisingly, Blake makes quick work of Loki, vowing that he will no longer be a refuge for any god ever again, and they will no longer be able to hide from him. Thor, I think he's coming for you. I think so. So many amazing new villains, so many amazing new stories and comics to read revolving around them. I hope you are as pumped up as I am for all these amazing new villains that are incoming and that we've met recently. It's always interesting to see when it comes to revamping characters or introducing completely new ones, what sticks and what quickly fades away. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. This is Top 10 Nerd and I am your host, Amanda McKnight. Till we see each other in the next video, you stay nerdy, YouTube.